So I was like using a lot of fake VHS filters and like, why doesn't this look good? And then I bought a pack and I watched their making of, and it was like, oh, we're filming CRTs. And I was just blown away by how simple it was in that way. I've got 7 CRTs hooked up to my computer right now.
CinePacks,
What is up? Welcome back to the CinePacks Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Casey, and with me is my co-host, Andy Chin. Today, we have a very special guest, Jack Harrison, the creative mind behind Digital Joy. He's known for his techniques blending analog elements with digital art, using retro video gear to create unique and compelling visuals. His work has caught the attention of many major artists like Kehlani, J. Cole, Ty Dolla $ign, Kings of Leon, and many others. He brings a fresh approach to digital art by capturing the warmth and character of analog, setting his work apart from the usual, stale digital effects. Jack, thanks for coming on today.
What up?
Yeah, dude. Been seeing your work all over Instagram. Been seeing it for a while, actually. I think one of our employees, he showed me your work a long time ago, and then I saw you collab with we collab with him as well. Videos Change Reality, VCR.
Yeah.
So yeah, very cool to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And you basically summed everything up, so I have nothing else to say.
All right, well, that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
That's the end of the episode. Yeah, I was checking out your website too, like just doing some research. That's where I snagged some of that stuff from. But your website's sick. I love that it had like those CRT elements and just like that, like I said, like that warm analog glow. And it's cool how you implemented that in.
Yeah, web developers hate me because I just put a video onto the website. It's like the least accessible thing. There's like no actual text. Like you cannot, like the SEO is terrible and like it has to load a video to launch it. My buddy's a web developer and he's like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, it looks good.
No, it looks really good. And it almost looked like, it reminded me of like playing like Mortal Kombat. On the bottom, like where you select all your characters, where you had like each artist you've worked with. That's what it kind of reminded me. Just like on like one of those old, like arcade machines.
I love that like graphic style of like scanning actual pictures. I was playing like an arcade shooter the other night, and it was just like the worst 3D environments with these like just photos of people running around. This is amazing.
For sure. Well, I definitely want to get into like some of your like techniques and things like that later on, but where did this journey kind of start? Did it kind of start like with videography at first? There wasn't like much. It seems like just I scrolled back on your page and I feel like it just kind of just started. Like it just seemed like you got straight into like the vintage stuff. I saw a couple like classic like videography stuff, but it seemed really stylized from the beginning.
Yeah, I did like a little scroll back on your Instagram as well, and I think I saw some stuff like you were developing like a video game and also like doing music and stuff like that. So like pretty interested in like what kind of started this whole creative endeavor, I guess, into this world.
Yeah, you're right on that front. I used to be a VR game designer. That's what was like my total passion. I went to university in Montreal at Camcorder for a program called Computation Arts, and just was obsessed with VR. Was like, it's gonna be everywhere. Like I need every one of my projects had to be VR. Like I was notorious in the classrooms. They're all like, oh, here comes Jack with another VR project. And so my final project there was designing a game which was called Versus. It was basically like the Quest was coming out, and so wireless headsets were like just first starting, and so I was kind of like obsessed with this idea of kind of like elevating like laser tag or like Nerf guns to the point of actually being playable. And so like I kind of designed this game and sold it to a company there, a startup who developed it with me. And then COVID hit, and they were selling the game to like arcades that people had to physically go to, like public spaces. And so it was just like, hey, we're basically like pulling everything back, and like they lost a lot of funding. And I kind of like at the same time I was moving back here to Toronto, and I just kind of took it as an opportunity to start doing some freelance stuff. My brother's a musician. He goes by The Count, and his stuff really blew up during the pandemic. And so I came in and was just helping him with video stuff, just getting videos together and like some graphics for that. And so like I basically theorized like, all right, he's got X amount of people buying his sample packs and producers and such. And so all these people need visual assets too. I'll sell to them. And that's where I started doing like freelance stuff. Around the same time, I grabbed a, like in Versus, all the advertising was all retro based because it was like laser tag. And I was like, we're bringing back laser tag. It's got to be all 80s steez. And so I was like using a lot of fake VHS filters and was always frustrated. Like, why doesn't this look good? Like, why can't anybody figure it out? It's old and we've got this new tech. Why does it always look fake and bad? And then I bought a pack by Ezra Cohen and Fred Pell. They did a CRT pack. And I was like, whoa, this looks good. Why does this look good? And I watched their making of, and it was like, oh, we're filming CRTs. And I was just blown away by how simple it was in that way. Like some overly complicated technically, but simple in terms of just like, oh, it's obvious. So I bought a CRT and made my first vintage graphic ad, which was Drum Boy. It was a action figure that I launched with my brother for a promo for one of his drum packs, and did the whole 80s style kind of kids commercial ad. And it literally, like, you type text into Photoshop and put it on that screen and scan it off, and it looks fantastic. And I was just like, oh, this is such a hack. And yeah, as I was posting that stuff, it just kind of seemed people just kept wanting them for their business. They wanted their stuff to look like that. And so everything I made, I just kind of processed through the screens, and it's just been an upward trajectory from there.
That's crazy. I'm kind of curious about the video game stuff. So the video game's not even a thing anymore, or is it like?
It's out. They're selling it.
It's
at like a lot of locations. It's like kind of worldwide, and they have like 100 locations spread around. Like you can go play it. It's called Versus. But,
and then do you get like royalties or anything like that from
no,
the game?
They made me sell like everything to them. Like I'm kind of like sour with that company in particular. I mean, they like helped me a lot, and they helped me launch the game, but they were also just like kind of classic tech company, and I was like dumb kid, and they're like, you need to sell us all of it, and I was like, okay. And yeah, and then when they like wanted me to be a partner in the company, my dad like sat me down. He's like, "Do you want to partner with these people?" And I was like, "No, actually." So, and so it was a really great experience building the game, and like I really like still believe that like VR gaming is a way more like natural form of play compared to like regular video games.
Yeah. Is that something you want to maybe do in the future? Because I've even seen like this guy. Yeah. Yeah. Is that what you said? Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I've seen this guy on like TikTok, and he just like plays like the cheapest VR games. I don't know if you've seen him, but like some of these games just look like you're saying, just look so like intuitive and just fun to play. And like he's playing like $5 games, and like I've even seen. I'm sure you've probably seen some of the ones like where you like play video games inside of VR, like you know, like retro games and things like that. So
there's a really cool like open source project with that. Some guy made it, and you're like in an old retro room, and you actually like grab the cables and plug them into the TV and pull the box out, and you can like look at the back of the box and like open up the disc and put it in the thing. And it's like that has just like such a benefit to like physicality and like remaining to have that feeling of picking up a game, but now you don't need to manufacture like a piece of plastic and such. So I really think that's going to make a comeback over the years as well.
And was your Versus game, was that like you said, it was very retro style? Is it pretty much like your style as well, like the kind of retro vibe? Yeah,
it very much had that kind of like inspiration. I didn't figure out the secret sauce of the analog gear until after, and they also really pushed back on stuff looking bad. Like I wanted it to look like realistically like old, and they were always like, no, it has to be sleek and cool. And I was kind of like, all right, like you just want to be like everybody else. But yeah, it was like, you know, blue, red lighting areas, and like very kind of like dark, and very like the logo is just like Versus VS, like with like neon glow. So
nice.
So yeah, you touched on some of you said that you were using some of the like classic plugins, you know, to like emulate these VHS effects, and like I feel like we've all have dabbled in those and really like once you use it a few times, I feel like you just get to the point where you're just like, this looks bad. Like, and then when you see it, you can tell. Like, I feel like one of the ones that is like really like hurts me is like the Red Giant Universe, like VHS effects. Like, I feel like it's, especially if you don't go in and like play with it, I feel like you can just instantly tell. Like, yeah.
I see it on like feature films all the time. Little like ads. I'll pull up like a trailer for a movie, and I'm just like, and everybody kind of like, when I'm watching a movie, they'll like look at me when like when a VHS effect comes on. And they're like, "How does this one look?" I'm like, "Bad." But some people are doing it really right. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told Alien Romulus has some really awesome like CRT stuff. Of course, like the originals of those movies are just like killer for that. It's like kind of the main inspiration, Blade Runner and Alien and stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
So when did you, one thing that I've noticed about your workflow is it's not all analog, obviously. You're combining Photoshop techniques, you're combining After Effects, and you still do use some plugins, which I've seen in some of your tutorials. So when did you kind of start like, like figuring out this workflow? Because I've seen you like really like dive into animation as well, like with these logos.
Yeah. It slowly kind of started to polish itself, and I just kind of fell in love with a few different effects. I think like digital is like super, super useful, and you can emulate CRT on digital. You just need to like run a lighting simulation in Blender or like Unreal Engine or something to get all like the actual effect of it, which is light bleeding out of these slots in a tiny little screen and shooting like a beam at it. Like that, you have to simulate it. And what I found is you just kind of like my workflow is like really try to focus heavily on the animation, and that's where I'm having fun. I really like to like I've been reading the animator survival kit, and that's just chock full of really cool like how to make something like come in and stop and feel like it really like made an impact, and like just kind of like bouncy and like juicy movements and stuff. And so that's like where the hard work is. And then the processing method, like the pipeline that I've got, is just like, okay, bounce it out onto the CRT, re-record, and bring it back into After Effects. And that's where you can kind of start to play with like, you throw a little bit of a plugin. Everything's Deep Glow plugin is like, it's awesome. It's just like an excellent glow, and that can just bring up some of the highlights a little bit. And as long as the source is analog, it's going to look analog, and it'll just kind of boost those characteristics of it. So it's definitely a mix of mixing it all together, which is why I call it like digital joy instead of analog joy, because at the end of the day, it's all pass through and you're watching it digitally. So
yeah, and I guess it depends on the order in which the workflow you're doing that, right? Because if you throw Deep Glow on top of what you've already passed through, through the analog, then is there a specific order that you do it? Are you,
Yeah. I mean, like if you do it before, it has a completely different look than if you do it after, because like now that glow is getting the CRT texture on it if you've put it on before. I used to do that all the time. I was like obsessed with it being glowing on the screen before, and I love that look, and I hate it now. It's super interesting that like I just moved that plugin around, and like I was really obsessed with it just being done on the CRT, and now I've since moved into getting the scans much cleaner and trying to bring them to that glowing point after. I think it works better for like some of my logos are now like getting seen in like the theater on like this huge screen, and like now it's like, okay, you need some of that detail, and you need some modern like crispness in there. Ezra Cohen, that same guy, did that. He did the CRT pack. He's got a 35 millimeter grain that I put on everything. It's just like the final pass, and it just adds some kind of pseudo sharpening essentially.
Nice. Yeah. Are you also a graphic designer as well? Like, are you designing logos for people?
Yeah.
Like from scratch as well?
Yeah. A lot of font work and a lot of design work. Most of my stuff is designed from scratch. I like prefer to do that way. It's just fun to have something from 0 to 100, like completely my own. I think that there's a lot of like asset pack sales right now, like I don't know, you see them all the time, Artist.io or whatever, like all these like ads on YouTube that are just trying to push these like pre-made things. And it's the joy of it for me is building it. So in the whole process, I'm kind of doing everything start to finish.
And how are you finding all these like the clients and stuff for all these projects that you're doing? Like, is it like, where are you based? You're in
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
And is it mostly like word of mouth, like through on like your website, or like kind of
I think it's all like Instagram, and like TikTok was the one where I originally like kind of like got a lot of attention, because I was just kind of like, I'm gonna do a video of me talking about this CRT, and those did really well on there. And I think that's like helps a lot, because people like see the care of processing this stuff, and they want that for their brand. They want their brand to have like heart in it. And so like when they see me processing this stuff on the old gear, they're kind of, there's this conception that like that will trickle into the brand, and I hope it does. But like, you know, it's people are always trying to throw money at problems to make their stuff better, and I'm happy to be one of those people that they're throwing some money at. But I guess I think also my brother is.
They can also tell like how much work you're putting into it, because you're taking it, you're doing all this work on your computer, you're taking it out, you're going through a whole TV system, like, and then you're re-recording it, bringing it back, editing on top of it. Like, it's definitely like you said, like there's care that goes into it, there's work that goes into it, so adds extra value to the end product, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah. Especially documenting the process, I think also helps, you know, like them see the amount of work, and you know, I did one specific one that I really enjoyed was the J. Cole album art for Might Delete Later. When you posted that was just insane, because it was a crazy time too, because all this beef and everything that was going on. I'm sure you were just like, whoa, like, yeah.
Glad I didn't do Drake's, but he's in a rough spot for sure. J. Cole's sick. Like, I'm glad that like he was apparently super hyped on it. The producer on that piece, Simon, reached out to me, and he knew my work and they were doing this whole behind the scenes of their tour on Handycam, and so they wanted some graphics for that, like kind of very secretive. They were like sending out DVDs to people of it and stuff, and so they wanted it to feel really authentic, and I was thankfully one of the people that they thought of, which was my goal from the start of finding this niche. Is I want to be the guy for this stuff, that when people think of it, they're like, oh, that guy. And so that was one of those cases where they wanted that specific look, and I gave them so many options. I just like was super hyped on it, worked my ass off on that, and just like pumping out, like, I was like, here's 3 different versions, and they're like, can you do another one? I was like, okay. And that last one ended up being the screenshot that they used for the cover.
Wow. So did you do the font work as well on that one?
Yeah, that's I'm pretty sure that font is Futura, like condensed.
I mean, just like, right? I mean, I guess just the graphic in general. Yeah,
everything is from scratch on that one. They had one of their designers do just the back cover of that, and then they sent that to me, and I processed it in the same way using that was all made using this piece of gear called the Rusty Joe by this guy Mezcalin. He's in Germany, and he hacks, like, kind of does circuit bending on old video mixers. I just ordered a new one. He just shouted me out on his like story. He's like, first I'm going to Mr. Jackie. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm super hyped on that one. It's like a little smaller, and like, you know, it just plugs in like standard, like that composite, like yellow cable. And then like those old mixers had like brightness and contrast and color, but then he's like gone in and studied like what's actually happening to the signal for that. And so it's like a little potentiometer with a resistor on it, and as you bring up the resistance on this one channel, it brightens it, and then he just cranks that to like 11 and lets you go over the level of those, and it starts to like overlap and glitch out. And that piece of gear is like my only like modern retro gear where you have to buy it now, and I think it was like $700, like some most expensive like piece of gear across all my stuff, but very worthwhile.
Yeah, it's cool. I feel like especially that one sounds like very specific, like where you can really fine tune. We actually sell a video synth that we collabed with Lo-Fi Future. I don't know if you've
they're really sick as well. One of those guys,
yeah. So we collab with him, and we have like a glitch effects that we sell, and like, but like it's cool even just like repurposing like the old tech. Like I've seen people do like old PS1s and like they like circuit bend those.
I think he was like circuit bending some. The lo-fi, the homie you were just showing out,
But yeah, that's super sick. Yeah, I mean, and then even the animation I think you posted recently of the might delete later was just super sick. So I feel like just like the warm glow to that, and then just like the I don't know, just everything about it was so perfect. I feel like it was just like it was cool. Definitely just seeing that as well, like from such a big artist, you know, and such like a big piece of work, and then. You just posting behind it like just out of nowhere, you know, it's just
respect.
And how did they was that have you worked with them before, or how did they find you?
I think they just kind of knew me from Instagram as well. The guy Simon was following me and like just reached out, and I think I like missed his DM. I miss DMs on Instagram all the time. There's just like way too many. I can't I don't like the social media as like a platform. It's fantastic for business and it's great. Like I feel like the only people doing stuff on there are artists now, which is great. It's a great platform to like everybody share what they're cooking up in their studios. But that was just like kind of random, and he gave me a call, and I think I was camping with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, whoa, shit, it's going down. Like,
hey, we appreciate you listening to the CinePacks Podcast. We actually don't have any sponsors for this podcast. It's all self-funded. So if you want to support us, head on over to our website, buy some digital assets or a lens filter. We'd really appreciate it. Enjoy the podcast. So what's kind of like, do you always have a CRT hooked up to like your desktop or whatever, so you can just basically, for those of people who don't know, you can basically just drag things over to it, right?
Yeah, I've got I think 7 CRTs hooked up to my computer right now. It's basically like I just rewired my whole studio, and it is like the hardest technical piece of work that I've like had to do. I really have a lot of respect for people who do this kind of stuff for a living, like for live shows and stuff like this, and figuring out just the pipeline of video signals and keeping everything clean. But I basically got 2 different passes coming out of my computer. One is a HDMI to S video, and S video is just like a little notch up above composite. It's got a little bit more quality. And that goes through like 3 mixers as well as those 5 different CRTs, and it just allows you to stack effects on each of them. One of them's that Rusty Joe piece. One of them's this Panasonic video mixer, which is one of my like favorite pieces of gear. That was one of like the shifting moments in my work where I got that, and I really started to see the potential with feedback loops and being able to like blend stuff and get cameras involved and whatnot. So that's like kind of classic pipeline. But then more recently, I've been really trying to level up the like quality of signal I send to these things, because these adapters, they're just kind of like cheap on Amazon, like little $70 adapter, and they're converting from a digital signal. So it's never going to look quite as good as it used to. And so recently I got like a really awesome like Blackmagic SDI out PCI card that you can't like, it's not like a monitor, like you can't click and drag like I do with the CRT, but you can send a signal into this other unit that I got. It's just like horrible technical jargon, but it's like a 90s digi Betacam deck that would have been like 40 grand, and like it's like weighs 170 pounds, but this thing has like a card in it that converts from digital to analog really well. It's like one of the machines they would have been using in the 90s to do these conversions when we were converting everything for web and converting everything for the modern era. And so that just looks like fantastic. That allows me to input onto machines like this one, which is a like 1-inch reel-to-reel deck, which they're like
crazy.
That one's like it's like a audio reel-to-reel, but for video, and it's what they would have used in the studios to keep the quality as high as possible until they're exporting on that final VHS that they're sending out. And so it looks old, but like good. It's a really weird like kind of middle ground that not a lot of people touch in this field. Most people are like VHS, like or Handycam is like the deepest they go into these things. And I've got a guy in Toronto, Retro Preservation. If you're like interested in this kind of tech, he is the king here in Toronto, and he's got all the gear, and he's the sweetest guy. And he just, anytime he finds anything, he gives me a call. He's like, "Hey man, do you still need that 1-inch reel-to-reel machine?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he gives me just like great deals. And again, like really, Hamza, he's a really sweet guy. So check out his stuff if you're into this stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely deep. I feel like it's crazy that you've gotten to the point like where you're trying to get the cleanest image possible with digital. Obviously, still doing tricks in between, but I feel like that's like a crazy like a goal in a sense to like get this bad digital image to look as good as possible.
Yeah,
but pretty crazy. But what are some tips that you would say for someone who just wants to get into CRT? Where should they start? Like, what are some of the basic things they would need, and how would they even go about capturing that?
Yeah, so really important piece of gear is your camera for how you're capturing it. A lot of people, you can capture the raw signal coming out of these things, but it looks nothing like it'll look coming off the CRT. That's a common misconception, is that like the signal holds everything, and it's not true, because the builds of these CRTs are completely different. That's why I have so many, because one of them looks completely different from the other. I would say the JVC professional video monitors are criminally underpriced. I like them more. Like Sony's really popular, and I'm not a huge fan of the look of them. Like the Trinitron screens are extremely sought after, but they look too good. Like they're too clean. And so when you're capturing them off the camera, everything gets blended together, and they look great if you're playing video games or you're watching stuff, which is what most of like the CRT community is really into doing. And that's why they're so popular and overpriced. But for video, for capturing art and animations off of the kind of other cheaper options end up looking way better. So I've just helped out a few friends get these setups going, but the bare minimum setup to get something looking really good is one of those HDMI to S video adapters, and then plugging that into a like JVC PVM. These 9-inch, 8-inch ones go for about $100, and they're like fantastic. And then you're just basically want to black out your room with some curtains and adjust the camera settings until everything's looking really good. The kind of key settings that I stick to a lot is 24 for the shutter speed and the frames per second. That's going to flicker, but it's going to flicker where instead of having black lines going through it, it's going to have double exposed lines, and so you're going to get this like brighter flicker. I think the flicker is part of the charm of it. Sometimes for full screen stuff, it's not a good call because it's going to flash the whole screen and it's going to feel like a strobing effect. But when it's just a small logo floating in the middle, it gives it this like glow and bleed out of itself. So yeah, 24 shutter speed, and then crank your ISO as low as possible, and then play with the aperture until you've got like a nice amount of bloom, because if you go too wide aperture, it's going to be really glowing and like blooming, and that flashing is going to be really intense. And so you just bring that down until it's in that sweet spot.
And then are you shooting 24 frames and shooting 24 shutter as well? Okay. And then
what shutter speed am I at right now?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell?
Yeah, it's flickering. So you must be at like 24. It's a good, that's the good flicker. Cause if you go higher than 60, then that's when things look really like really like, you get these black lines always on the phone. If you're trying to pull out the phone and like film a CRT, it always like jumps around, cause it's like the phone's just like holding your hand through video and like just wants to do everything auto. What's it called? The DaVinci, the new like DaVinci app, it's the Final Cut camera app that just dropped on Apple, gives you like way more minute control, and you can actually get those settings. That will work on the phone. But again, your strongest, the piece of gear that you're going to want to throw money at to make it look better is your camera.
And are you using like, are you trying to capture it as clean as possible on the camera? from the CRT. Like, so would you use like filters or like, you know, vintage lenses or anything like that to kind of
I love I love the vintage lenses. I'm getting I've just ordered an adapter for my old like Sony broadcast camera that has a crazy lens. I'm excited to see what that's looking like. The blooming filters can do some cool stuff, although again, I'm leaned more into getting clean captures these days, but it can have some interesting effects. But yeah, like that's what kind of makes it modern, is like it's a 4K video of a CRT. Like that's why it looks sharp, but not sharp. Like that's where the bridge of the two like technologies comes in.
Yeah, and then you're setting focus to just the screen.
Focus is a weird one because when you focus directly on the screen, you get what's called like moire, and it's like this weird like rainbow pattern. And I think it's because our eyes look past, when we're looking at CRTs, we actually focus a tiny bit past the screen. You're not actually focusing on the pixels, but almost like what's behind the pixels, and so that's what blurs it all together. And so I actually focus either a little bit past or a little bit in front of the like very very tiny bit amount, and you can see it on the footage where it like everything gets more colorful and vibrant and everything kind of blends together. And so playing with focus is really really fun. I'll often like as a logo's coming in, I'll like defocus my lens a lot, and then as it comes in, I'll like bring the focus in, and that like has this really really weird effect where like, because the light's bleeding out, and like it's impossible to do like digitally. So like again, play with focus as another parameter in your animation.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's a crazy process. I didn't know, like I obviously knew like the basics, but I feel like it just like goes so much deeper than like people actually see with I love the video. It was the one I forget the actual name of it. It was the one about the diamonds, like where you made this diamond in Blender. Mm-hmm. And then like it was just the craziest process, because you went from like Blender like animating, then you brought that into like After Effects, and then you just like, and then you showed like, you know, you're focusing with this vintage lens, you're like racking the focus, and then you like had all these like, you animated, like you made this whole lyric video, and it was like so clean, but it still like, it looked like something you would watch like in like the like 80s or 90s, just on like a, I don't know, like a commercial or like VHS or something.
That was for Diamond Cafe. He's a homie who's like really like in the 80s stuff, and his team like reached out to me to make like, I think I made 4 or 5 lyric videos. So on YouTube, they're all there. I've actually been meaning to post the kind of last one that I made, because I worked really hard on it. It looks really sick.
How long does it take for like to do a project like that, like a full, because it's a full song, right? Like 3 minutes. Type of thing.
That one, like I very rarely do that kind of work for clients now, because it's extremely painstaking, and you know, he's very tied in with like my community here in Toronto. Like his management's here, and Nadia is like one of his managers, and she like came by the studio, and like we were like brainstorming together. And so that's the kind of thing that really makes a big project like that worthwhile and feel like fun, because we're working together, and it's such like a collaborative experience. Whereas like just sitting on a computer for that long is like really annoying. But one of those would probably like, to do one, it would probably be like about a week's worth of work. Luckily they had an animator and like a designer on their team that did the text work, and just basically animated in really basic like lyric video. I took that, processed it, as well as did the diamond and processed that, and then kind of matched them together. And that's like the hardest part, is like typing all this shit out, and when like the song's coming in, the words are flying in, like that's like big ups that guy who did that side of the work, because then I get to just have the fun part.
That probably would have added like an extra like week.
Doubled. Like easily, like most of the work is in that part.
Yeah, lyric videos are satisfying, but making those seems like such a hassle.
Totally.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on AI coming into our space as like creatives, and have you been implementing any AI tools into your workflow, or what's your take on that?
Definitely, like it's cool. Like this shit is like mind-blowing. Like my friend Carter is really into it, and he sent me some screenshots of like there's a new AI model for image stuff called Flux or something, and like it's crazy. Like it just looks real, and I was like, oh, it's really like a little like scary. I'm happy that my stuff is not that common, so there's not a lot of like good CRT stuff to feed AI to make more good CRT stuff. And but you know, I've thought a lot about, okay, if you fed an AI model a really clean 4K image, and then that same image passed through a CRT, and you just feed it tons and tons of both of those and train like a model that can essentially CRT stuff in the same way, because it'll do all the same things that the CRT does. I think that's like, it's going to be a very powerful tool in the future for making good VHS effects. So that's cool. But there's a lot of people are really, really up in arms about it, and it's rightfully so, I suppose. But you know, it's one of those things. Like VR used to always really freak me out as well. Like when I put it on, and like you like are playing a shooter and you're holding a gun up to somebody's face and you're like pulling the trigger, and I'm like, it was the first time that like old people were always like up in arms about video games in like the 80s and the 90s. Oh my God, there's violence and they're gonna turn into shooters and all of this shit. And I was always like, whatever, old man, like who cares? And then I tried VR and I was like, oh, I get it now. Like this is like, I saw a video of like a little girl like shooting a like guy, and he drops dead in front of her. And I was just like, oh, maybe don't put your daughter in that game. Like it was like a kind of like American like big like shooter dad who's like getting her trained up early, and like I'm like, oh man. So I feel like there's my philosophy with VR, and I'll apply the same thing to AI, is it's nice to have like this shit's a runaway train regardless. Technology is just going to keep piling forward at full speed. And so it's nice to have a little bit of like a control on the wheel, and to be able to like help steer it in a good way, using AI to like generate good content, so that like, I don't know, educational content that might have taken a lot of production to work out, and now people can learn more. Or like for VR, it was like, all right, very passionate for VR usage for kids. Like, all right, tell people not to put their kid into a game where they're shooting somebody in the face. Like this is like where you need to be just like careful with it. And the AI is just another piece of tech you got to be careful with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I played what's that game? The first time I played it, like Super Hot. Have you played that one? Yeah, that game's so fun. But just like, yeah, I don't know, I played it way too much, and like you just feel like you're actually in the room after a while. You're just like killing all these like red figures, and it's crazy.
That one's good. It's got that stylistic element where it's not so
realistic.
Like, realistic.
Like,
yeah. But that mechanic is awesome. Where when you move,
the slow
time moves, like, genius. Like that's some game design stuff that you could only do in VR. I mean, they had the game like for not in VR originally, and it works. But in VR, it just feels so cool. Like you're turning your head slowly, and the guy's like moving into the room. Really, really awesome development team on that.
Hey, real quick, didn't know if you knew this, but CinePacks actually has 3 studio locations in Los Angeles. If you're a filmmaker, photographer, and you're looking for a studio space, look no further. CinePacks is here. We have one location in South LA that has multiple music video sets, has a small LED wall. We have an entire vintage house in East Hollywood. We have a large LED wall studio in North Hollywood as well, with tons of standing sets. You can check out the studios at cinepackstudios.com or check us out on Instagram at CinePacks Studios. Enjoy the rest of the episode. So, I've also seen you kind of toy around with like camcorders and whatnot, and you kind of spoke on that a little bit. Do you ever like film on handy cams, or how do you also like? You mentioned like feedback loops, like how do you implement like camcorders and cameras into your workflow as well?
Yeah, I love camcorders. The format of like a handy cam is like the best video camera. Like it's so fun. Like that's, I think, its biggest benefit over anything is just it feels super, super fun. I had like a Canon Handycam, my parents bought it for us when we were kids, and me and my brother would just make videos like all the time. Like we needed to get a FireWire card on our computer to be able to edit them, and so we just like water guns, like missions. Like my brother's really into Splinter Cell, so we've just got like tons of videos of him pretending to be Sam Fisher, like crawling along areas and like sniping guys and taking guys out, and like so that was just like our toy as a kid. And I plan far in the future when I have kids of my own, that's going to be their toy, not like a smartphone or something like that. I really feel like just having a camera is like such a fun like toy, and I still stand by that today, where I'm not sure that these cameras are always the best choice stylistically, but for the joy of making the stuff, it's definitely my favorite. I just working with this guy, Zach Mayfield. He does camcorder reviews on YouTube, and like talks a lot about that stuff. And he did one on the VX1000, which is like a really popular old skater Sony Handycam, and one of like the holy grails of camcorders. Yeah. And I hit him up, or I followed him, and he got told about my work and found me and saw that I followed him. And so he hit me up and was just like, hey man, like love your stuff. I'm looking like maybe for a new intro for my YouTube channel. And I was like, give me your VX1000. I'll do it for free. And he was like, okay. And so he's sending it to me right now. I just finished up his logo, and we're rebranding his like retro camcorder review series, which was just called Retro Camcorder, or like Retro Reviews, and we're gonna call it Rerun now. It's like looking really sick, process it all properly, and he's sending me a little goodie bag with that camcorder and some other little trinkets. So that's the newest one that I'm super hyped on.
That's sick. Yeah, you got to get the fisheye, the classic. What is it? What's the brand that makes it? I know they're crazy expensive on eBay. It's like the Century or something like that.
Totally. Yeah, the classic skater build set up for it.
Yeah. That's sick. Yeah, I just got it like became rare. I made like a tapeless build out of like the SC5. Have you seen that camera? Mm-mm. It's like this. I'll go get it. It's like the weirdest build ever.
Yeah, the tapeless stuff is like definitely an interesting like avenue. It's hard to get the signal right.
It's like super.
Yo, that's sick.
Super funky. And then
that's the good tapeless.
Yeah, right.
Little machine.
So yeah, someone made like this dangy cam on Instagram. They made this mount, but this camera's crazy. So it doesn't have an optical zoom. It's like it physically switches lenses.
Cool.
So it's like a whip pan almost. Yeah. But it slides between them, so you get like this cool in-camera transition. It's pretty sick. Yeah,
that's tight. Send me some footage of that. I'd love to
for sure. Yeah, it's a fun one. Yeah, you should get one. But sick. Yeah, what is your favorite piece of gear that you have in your studio? Because your studio is like you've made like a studio tour video as well that I've seen, and you also do like a lot of collabs with like Adobe. But yeah, what is some of your favorite pieces of gear that you have acquired over the years?
Yeah, the Panasonic mixer, the MX50A. I've also got the MX30, and that is like my favorite. It changed everything, being able to input everything into it and also input it into itself to create an internal feedback loop. It's like such a powerful tool, and just allows me to have all this stuff hooked up at once, which is so valuable. That's probably like really up there. I've been really loving this new like that 8-inch JVC $100 monitor I was mentioning before. I bought another one, so I've got two hooked into this system. It's a really good characteristic look. It's really high resolution, but is small, and so it's just like super compact. I can like bring it along with me if I go to the cottage and need to do some work. Like it's such a versatile little machine. Yeah, so those are definitely the two on the top of my list. I would love to have this 1-inch reel-to-reel like working properly, but it's such a complicated thing to get a good signal to. So I want to say that one, but I haven't actually run anything on it yet.
Gotcha. It just looks cool right now.
It just looks cool in the studio.
I'll take that. Yeah, I feel like that's a big problem with trying to get like your first CRT as well, is like finding one that's like compact enough, because like you get these giant ones and it just takes like 80% of your office, and it's just like big, bulky on the back. So yeah, those monitors are definitely like nice, especially just the fact that you can like stack them and things like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend that size for like the 8 to 12 inch for this kind of work.
And how are you tracking down like these very specific, like, because none of this stuff is like, they don't manufacture this stuff anymore. It's like very niche and very just kind of like how, first of all, I guess how are you doing the research to find out what kind of stuff that you need for this? And like, how are you just always on eBay, or like, you know, or is there like a big community in your area that's kind of like also into this niche, I guess?
Another shout out to just retro preservation, Hamza there. He is always on this stuff and has storage lockers full of them. He's more into like the tape deck stuff, and so that's my guy for that stuff. He's quicker than me on Facebook Marketplace and whatnot, and so he scoops this stuff up right away. And he's putting together like a like museum with another guy right now with all this stuff, and so he's like the Indiana Jones of like retro gear. He's super it belongs in a museum, like very much like collecting all that stuff. And but yeah, my social media like guilty pleasure of choice is Facebook Marketplace, and so every day I'm drawn to that, and I've recently like had to put a stop to it because I buy way too much stuff. And that's the research: is you buy it, you plug it in, you use it. Does it work? Sell it or get rid of it or give it away. That's like there's no way of knowing how a CRT performs until it's in your hands, until you're sending a signal into it. So hard to. I've done a lot of trying to research stuff and asking communities what's the best S-video CRT, and people are just so opinionated on the stuff. So you really need to just like grab your own and get it going. But yeah, it's funny because I've like caught myself going on Facebook like reels and like meme stuff, which are like the worst place for like those kinds of things. Like they're always so like cringy and like funny in this wrong way. And like it's funny that Facebook has weirdly become one of my bigger platforms just because of the proximity near those CRTs.
That's funny. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I feel like especially those communities, they're crazy. Like even like with that tapeless build, like people shit on that power play like digital, and it's just crazy. It's just like it's so convenient and compact, but like some of those communities can get a little bit crazy. But what are like, so you're saying you don't know like, you know, how the CRT works until you have it in your hands. Like how often are you just ordering something off eBay and it's just like, oh, this doesn't work at all? Because like, you know, do you have someone who you know that like repairs this old tech? Have you like looked into that? Or is it kind of just like, if it doesn't work, then I just have to scrap it?
Yeah, it's kind of like there are fixes, and a lot of people do like recaps of CRTs where they go in and they resolder on like every capacitor on the board. And it's like there are people who are really into that. I probably will start to go into that line of work once the well of CRTs, working CRTs starts to run dry. But I don't really like my M Squared Circuits here in Toronto is really sick for, he's really good at repairing audio gear. And so a lot of the stuff is quite similar. He's just like a whiz with a soldering iron. And so he's my guy if ever anything really important breaks, but most of the time I'm just buying something new.
Interesting.
Are you buying these from just like garage sale, like type of like just like anybody who just happens to have one?
Facebook Marketplace is like the spot, because shipping these things is really expensive, often as much as the things themselves.
Might damage too.
Yeah, there's some horror stories of people's CRTs just coming in shattered. The shipping system is not designed for these heavy like built things anymore. They're just tossing stuff around. I've ordered just that JVC monitor on eBay. It's like my only eBay purchase, but I'm in the market for a new like VGA old computer monitor right now because mine started to go, and I really loved the look of it. I did the latest like the Wolfpack like lyric video, and I just, one of my favorite looks, like doesn't look like a CRT. It's like super flat and like clean, and so like it's another category that I miss from my studio right now, and so I'm considering dipping into the eBay well.
Nice.
A lot of tools. I was gonna see, so you said you had some some success on TikTok and Instagram, and you've accumulated this following, and you've said you've just got like a plethora of work from like Instagram directly. Yeah. How important do you think was like documenting your process versus just posting your work? Because like if you look at your Instagram, there's not just like, there is a lot of like logo work and like these amazing logos that just pop out on the platform, but I've also found you from just you showing your process, like, hey, I'm gonna and like you just in your office, like what would you account, like what do you think, like what do you think was more important, like documenting that process or posting your work?
Yeah, I mean, you got to post the finished stuff because that's like the whole thing. That's the art. Like Ginger Root just did a video on being like, hold on, like let's stop doing process videos because like just let the thing breathe and live in its own light. And so I've been doing less of them as of late just because I'm very, very busy and it's hard to also make a video. But I would say it was like 90% of the reason why I'm where I'm at right now. It was very inspired by my brother who was making fantastic music, like awesome albums, and he was pouring his heart into them, and he would spend like months on this album and then put it out and nobody would listen to it. It would just sit on Spotify and it would get like a couple thousand views, and he was just like kind of crushed from that. And then one day he decided, how do I show like the making of this? And so he started making these beat videos where he would bring out the shaker that's on the song and show himself shaking it as it comes in, right when it comes in, and you see it and your mind goes, oh, I hear it now. Like you can kind of like really appreciate every single minute sound because they were really, really rich, large, like musical pieces with all these different cool world percussion and stuff, and you can't see that in the album. Like you have to see it with your eyes, and so I always kind of like had the plan to like what is each element, what you're looking at here. Here's the graphic design element, here's the animation element, here's the processing element, and it really helps you see the thing at the end. And I run my mouth a lot more than my brother does. My brother's quiet guy. He just makes his beats and bobs his head, and instead I'm kind of like, look at the CRT, look at all the cool things on it. And so I think like it's a different type of video, but I was definitely very inspired by the making of process of his beat videos.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good way to start as well. Like if you can document the process, and and then if you get to the point where you can just show the work and let the work speak for itself, and then educate when you feel you want to, because I definitely even just like the collabs and like tutorial type things you've done with like Photoshop and like Adobe. So those have been super sick to see. And yeah.
Always helpful to give a little tip, I think. Just share the sauce. My brother he's got like his little quote. He's like, anybody who's afraid to give away their sauce must have a limited amount. So he's just like, if you're scared to show your process, you're probably afraid you're gonna run out of ideas. But nobody runs out of ideas. Humans are good at making shit up.
I feel like sharing the sauce also helps you just come up with like push yourself further, like anytime I've shared like on a YouTube video or something like that, I feel like it's pushed me to like in my creative process to reach a little further, because I feel like you stay comfortable with your sauce, you're just reusing the same thing over and again, and then you like I don't know if you felt the same way, but
once you show it, now you're like, okay, how do I level this up now, kind of thing. I feel
sick.
that.
Is there anything else you want to plug? Anything else you got coming up? VR games, anything like that?
I mean, my homie Owen were up smashing beers and coding last night for a new kind of AR game that we're working on. So we'll see where that goes one day. Just my brother's album. I'm doing a lot of work on that. It's called Easy to Get Where You're Going. It's not been announced yet, but it's going to drop like early next year. And I'm doing a lot of the music videos and a lot of the promotion and animation for that. It's a very much a passion project for both of us. And so that's going to be awesome. Got some really awesome collabs on there, some big names that everybody will be really excited to see and to bump.
Fire. Sick. Yeah. Any advice for upcoming filmmakers and people trying to get into the CRT space?
yeah, get off your chair, your desk chair, and go twist some knobs, because it's way more fun.
Sick. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Andy.